The Cold War was a period of geopolitical tension between the United States and the Soviet Union and their respective allies, the liberal West Bloc and the communist Eastern Bloc. Historians generally consider the Cold War to have taken place between March 12, 1947, through the dissolution of the Soviet Union on December 26, 1991. Despite no official battles between the clashing sides, the Cold War got its name from competition caused by nuclear development races, the space race, and propaganda. These constant rivalries, along with nuclear war, meant that tensions rocketed between the two countries and thus prevented trade and the exchange of ideas. Ultimately, these tensions were set aside to fund a larger and more productive goal of the International Space Station. Cold War tensions gave way to international cooperation in space through diplomatic ventures between global powers, through multiple nuclear agreements to reduce nuclear weapons, keep nuclear weapons out of the Earth's orbit, and focus on peace through science and cooperation. The United States and Russia made the first steps towards creating peace in 1967 with the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. This treaty became vital as the United States and the Soviets reached equal nuclear power. The first objective of the treaty focused on preventing the spread of nuclear weapon technology by promoting peaceful nuclear energy through restrictions put in place by the International Atomic Energy Agency to make sure that all nations were adhering to the treaty. Secondly, the treaty prevented the sale or proliferation of nuclear weapons to non-nuclear countries. Quote, "The non-nuclear states pledged not to acquire or develop nuclear weapons of their own." This treaty put an end to potential unified nuclear forces, which made sure that nuclear weapons were not spread throughout the world. Additionally, the spread of nuclear weapon technologies were limited in orbit around the Earth, with the United States and Russia deciding that weapons of mass destruction and conventional weapons would not be tested or stationed in space or celestial objects like the Moon, to prevent a nation from controlling such a vast and important scientific resource. The culmination of these agreements led to the signing of the Outer Space Treaty to prioritize space over political conflict. This new agreement made sure that no nation could have weapons capable of destroying an entire country or a country's satellites. Although this agreement kept nuclear weapons out of orbit, it did not keep conventional weapons out of orbit, with the Russian space station Salyut 3 outfitted with a 23mm cannon. Salyut 3 was the second Almaz military space station and the first space station of military nature with an onboard gun. Even though this treaty was not followed to the fullest, it still aided Cold War tensions between Russia and the United States. After the United States and Soviet Union established a shared understanding of each other's culture and ideas, they could progress with removing weapons platforms to reduce Cold War tension. The first method that they used to restrict these weapons were the SALT talks, which took place between 1972 and 1979. The SALT talks were composed of summits that passed multiple bills to restrict highly advanced weapon platforms like heavy bombers and long-range missiles. Although the second SALT talk was unsuccessful, it pioneered the way to the INF Treaty in 1987. The INF Treaty limited the distribution of intermediate and short-range missiles around the world, and mandated that the extensive intrusive verification measures to make sure that all nations were complying. Cold War tensions ceased as the Soviet Union fell in 1991, which led the world to strive to peace. Former Soviet Union countries in Eastern Europe took the advantage of this new peacetime to democratize and disarm nuclear weapons. These nations initiated the START program, which set a goal of reducing the strategic nuclear arsenals by 3,000 to 3,500 warheads by 2003. This made the START program the first legislation between the countries to mandate the disassembly of nuclear weapons. The fall of the Soviet Union resulted in a new era of peace and inclusion of Russia in Western trade and science. Without the political burden of the United States and Russia as potential adversaries, they began to work together on peaceful science-focused projects in space. For example, the Atlantis space shuttle docked with the Mir space station in 1995 to create the largest spacecraft to orbit the Earth. This joint docking was not only a feat of great technology in space, but also in politics. And as Yuri Kopatev, the head of the Russian Space Agency, said, "This docking is not simply a docking, but another political step, and we hope to learn more about each other." As conflicts between East and West came to a close, there was no need for a purely Western space station. In 1993, competition was replaced by the spirit of cooperation when the United States invited Russia to join the International Space Station program. The International Space Station includes space programs from around the world to, quote, "support scientific research and other activities requiring unique attributes of human in space, and establish a permanent human presence in Earth's orbit," end quote. The Russian partnership was invaluable for the International Space Station, as Russia had the greatest experience in space station design, construction, and management. Russian knowledge also provided the program with reliable Soyuz and Proton rockets to launch components and supplies to the International Space Station. On November 20th, 1998, The first module of the International Space Station was sent into orbit, with a second following 2 weeks later. These first modules of the International Space Station provided electricity and control of the early station. As more space programs like the Japanese Space Station, the Canadian Space Agency, the European Space Agency, the Russian Space Agency, and the Brazilian Space Program each provided technology for the International Space Station, the station and its ability for research grew. These programs began to use the ISS for new medical and scientific research that could not be done on Earth. New technology from this research led to countless short-term impacts on the global population. The International Space Station has led to numerous inventions and ideas that allow us to lead better and healthier lives. In order for people to live in space, they need highly advanced water and air filtration. This necessity has led to cheap and easy-to-use water filtration. Advances in water filtration technology for the International Space Station has created opportunities for similar water filtration technology to become commercial products for controlling the microbial growth in water without the use of power. This technology dispenses iodine into the water to clean the water, and works so well that a commercial variation of this technology has been enhanced and adapted for affordable and easy-to-use water filtration products throughout India, Mexico, Central America, Pakistan, and South America. The International Space Station also led advances in robotics from the Canadarm, a Canadian robotic arm for moving modules and objects around the ISS. This arm was a significant leap forward in robotics and can lift 30,000 kilograms using less energy than a teapot. The International Space Station has paved the way for new ideas in space, like commercial satellites and private space corporations, who replenish the supplies on the ISS. Microsatellite launching companies have followed suit of the International Space Station and provide schools and companies the means to launch CubeSats of all different purposes into the Earth's orbit. One such company has sent more than 200 CubeSats from the International Space Station and provides their customers with a safe and reliable launch so that people from around the globe can create and launch affordable satellites. The International Space Station also allows for private rocket companies like SpaceX to have a commercially viable rocket like the Falcon 9 or International Space Station for resupply and government missions. This system is so effective that it recently brought a crew of astronauts aboard the ISS with the better crew conditions at a cheaper price than government-funded options. International cooperation in space is a highly beneficial frontier that needed to be broken so that humans could learn about our planet and conduct research that would not have been possible on Earth. Transitioning from Cold War tensions to the atmosphere of science that the ISS has facilitated in just 40 years shows how polarizing and powerful the quest for science and advances in technology are.